Hey everyone, my name's Cade Bekanich, certified financial planner, and today I want to talk to you about something that might not be the happiest topic, but it's incredibly important. Financial mistakes to avoid before a divorce. I know, nobody walks down the aisle thinking about divorce strategies, but the reality is about 51% of marriages end up in divorce, especially in the United States, and the financial fallout can be devastating if you're not prepared. Now, I'm not here to encourage anyone to end their marriage, but I am passionate about helping people protect themselves financially during life's most challenging transitions. Within and outside of my practice, I've seen too many people make costly mistakes during this emotional time that affected their financial well-being for years after the divorce. So whether you're considering a divorce, in the middle of a divorce, or simply want to be informed just in case, which is always smart, these next few minutes could save you thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars and countless headaches. Let's dive into the 5 biggest financial mistakes people make before a divorce and how you can avoid them. Mistake number 1, maintaining the same spending habits as when you were married. The first major mistake I see people make all the time is continuing to spend as if nothing has changed, as if they still have the same household income and the same monthly expenses before the divorce is final. This is a recipe for financial disaster. Here's the reality check. After divorce, the same pool of money that once supported one household now has to support 2. Unfortunately, after a divorce, your household income will likely drop significantly, oftentimes statistically by 40% or more. Yet I still see clients who keep right on spending at pre-divorce levels, racking up credit card debt and digging themselves into a financial hole that takes years to climb out of. That's where I come in. Recently, I worked with a client, I won't name her name, who just continued shopping at high-end stores and taking expensive vacations right up until her divorce was finalized. She was shocked when she realized her lifestyle today would need a major adjustment when she was living on just her income compared to joint spousal income. By the time reality hit, she had accumulated over $20,000 in credit card debt. Instead, try this approach. As soon as a divorce becomes a possibility, create a new budget based on your personal income, clear on needs versus wants. This not only helps you prepare financially, but also gives you valuable documentation of your actual expenses. This can be important during settlement negotiations for your divorce. Remember, it's much easier to adjust your lifestyle gradually and intentionally than have it forced upon you suddenly when the divorce is final. Mistake number 2 is making significant purchase right before filing for divorce. I'm talking about buying a new car, investing in expensive art, or putting a down payment on a vacation property. Here's why this is problematic. Courts don't look kindly on spouses who suddenly start making big purchase when divorce is on the horizon. These purchases can appear as you're trying to hide or spend down marital assets, which can seriously damage your credibility with the judge. I'm glad they weren't my client, but I've worked with a client whose spouse bought a brand new $75,000 truck 2 months before filing for divorce. The court saw this as dissipation and ordered him to pay half of the value of the truck back to his wife. Not only did he end up with a truck payment he could barely afford on a single income, but he also had to come up with cash to compensate his ex for the purchase. If you absolutely must make a major purchase before divorce, make sure it's for a legitimate need, properly documented, ideally discussed with your spouse regardless of where you're at in the process. Better yet, if you can, wait until after the settlement to make non-essential larger purchases. It'll be much easier on you mentally and financially. This keeps everything clean and above board before the divorce is finalized. This third mistake can be particularly costly. Starting a new business while your divorce is still pending. This might seem like a great idea at the time, a fresh start in your new career, but from a legal and financial perspective, it's usually a terrible idea when starting a new business before a divorce is finalized. Here's why this is problematic. Research shows that businesses started during divorce proceedings can be subject to tense scrutiny and may be considered marital property even if your spouse had no direct involvement with creating the business. And according to legal experts, if you use any marital funds or assets to launch the business, your spouse can claim partial ownership or even partial value of that business, which could of course then be included in your divorce proceedings. This can lead to complicated valuation issues and potentially give your spouse a stake in your new venture, exactly what most people are trying to avoid. Let me share a real life example with you. One client started a consulting business just 2 months before filing divorce. He used almost $15,000 from a joint savings account as a startup capital. Even though the business barely had any clients yet, his spouse's attorney actually successfully argued that the business was partially marital property since it was funded with marital assets. So number 1, the court ordered a business valuation which cost the couple thousands of dollars in expert fees alone, and ultimately his spouse was then awarded an additional 40% of the valued business because of the divorce proceeding. So if you have entrepreneurial aspirations, either launch your business well before divorce is on the horizon or wait until after the divorce is finalized. I promise you it will be much easier. This gives you a much clearer separation between marital assets and your new venture, which will only allow you to focus on your new business more and pursue it to your fullest extent. The fourth mistake is one that nearly affects everyone going through a divorce: making financial decisions based on emotions rather than logic. Let's be real and say that divorce is an emotional hurricane. You might feel anger, grief, guilt, fear, or all of the above, and these powerful emotions could cloud your judgment precisely when you need to be making the most sound financial decisions of your life. I've heard of people insist on keeping the family home even though they clearly couldn't afford the mortgage, property taxes, insurance, or maintenance on the home as they were single. Why? Why? Because they had an emotional attachment to the house or wanted to maintain stability for their kids, but in reality, it was detrimental to their finances and still is to this day. While these feelings are valid and should be acknowledged, sometimes these decisions lead to financial hardship that far outweigh the sentimental connection to the property. And when you're emotionally exhausted, the temptation to just sign whatever to end the process could be much more overwhelming in the future. This can lead to serious financial regret. After an 18-year marriage, I've heard of somebody who was emotionally drained by the divorce process that she so easily agreed to have a settlement that gave her ex-husband 70% of the retirement savings that she had saved. This was simply just to avoid going to court. But in reality, this impacted her not only immediately, 20 years down the road when she had tried to retire by herself. And although this wasn't my client, I know the situation very well. And 2 years after the divorce had actually settled, it was far too late to modify the agreement. So my advice, assemble a good team such as a divorce financial analyst, an attorney, and maybe even a therapist to help you separate the emotions from finances. When making any significant financial decision during divorce, ask yourself, would I make the same decision if I were in a business partnership dissolution? If the answer is no, you might be letting emotions drive the car. Which leads us to mistake number 5, forgetting to update beneficiary designations. And the 5th mistake might seem small compared to the others, but it could have major consequences in your estate plan. Here's what happens all too often. The divorce gets finalized, assets are divided, and everyone moves on with their lives. Yet, years later, someone passes away, and suddenly their ex-spouse, the person that they had been divorced from, receives their entire life insurance payout or retirement account, even though that was absolutely not what they would have wanted. Why? Because they forgot to update their beneficiary designation. These designations typically override what's in your will. So even if your will says everything goes to my children, so if your ex-spouse is still listed as a beneficiary on your old 401k or life insurance plan, even if your will says otherwise, the ex-spouse will still be entitled to those assets. This means that regardless of whether or not you made a new will, if those ex-spouses are still named as beneficiaries on your 401k or old life insurance policies, they'll still be entitled to those assets even when you pass away. That is why it's important to keep your estate documents as updated as possible, especially after a divorce. You can easily give up tens, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of dollars in assets if these designations aren't changed immediately. This oversight causes not only financial loss to your loved ones, incredible emotional pain. As soon as your divorce is final, or even earlier if your divorce agreement allows it, update beneficiary designations on life insurance policies, 401ks, IRAs, or any other retirement accounts, or even pension plans that you have as soon as possible. And don't forget bank accounts with payable on death provisions. This simple step just takes a few minutes but can prevent major financial headaches and ensure your assets go exactly where you intend them to, especially after you pass away. So there you have it, 5 critical financial mistakes to avoid before or during a divorce. I pray over your marriages. I hope you have nothing but happiness and success in your marriages. But should the time come, should you need guidance, click the link in the description below to schedule your first meeting today to determine the steps that you need to take in order to develop financial certainty and confidence following your divorce. I'm Cade Bekanich, certified financial planner, owner of Park Lane Financial Group. Like, subscribe, follow for more, and thanks for watching.